Hi folks, Matt Easton here. So last video I uploaded was talking about doubles in HEMA, that is double hits or double kills as some people refer to them. In actual fact I don't like the term double kill because just because there are two hits doesn't mean that both people or even one of them would be killed. And yes, there's a paradox in this situation because we know that double hits, double kills happened. However, that isn't a reason to excuse them or replicate them, because clearly they're not something that you want to happen unless you're suicidal or some kind of kamikaze assassin. So those things aside, you don't want double hits to happen, very clearly. However, a few people misunderstood the overall point that I was making, in that I do absolutely believe in training myself and my students to deal with people who are likely to try and double on them, either intentionally or through being relatively new or for whatever reason at all. And in fact this goes right the way back. If we go to the Masters of Defence, the London Masters of Defence in the 16th century, then we know that they trained to become a master. We know that they trained to fight. You had to pass a test fighting certain different types of individuals, and one of these was an untrained person and another one was someone who might be drunk or whatever, out of control basically. And in these kind of situations, absolutely, if you try and hit someone, the other person in that moment, either through aggression or panic or just not knowing what they're doing or flinch response, whatever, will just go ah and just hit back the moment that you move, the moment that you do anything to them. And in fact there are a number of very effective ways to train against fighting against those kind of people, and that's what I hinted at in my previous video. So when you start fighting someone, it's one of the dangers of just going straight in. The danger is if you just do that and you don't form the proper structure and the opponent doesn't care about the threat for whatever reason, or just doesn't know how to respond to the threat, they may just hit you. And someone might go, oh, but if I do the perfect Überhau at them, forming the, you know, making a covered line as I cut and making a traversing step and all of this stuff, I can minimize the chances of them hitting me. Yes, you can minimize it. However, if a person just goes ah and just hits you in the leg, your sword isn't going to protect your leg. Okay, as you step into distance to hit them in the head, yes, you might kill them, but they may kill you. They may cut through one of your arteries in your leg, or they may lame you for life. Now clearly that's a bad thing to happen. If we look at later period HEMA sources, for example Sabre, which is obviously what I mostly study, then in actual fact they do give you advice about what to do against a person who does this kind of what they would call a stop hit or stop cut, stop thrust. And there are certain things you can do to them. Now I won't go into those things in this video, but the key part, the important part to recognise, is you have to know that that person is going to do that before you can introduce a countermeasure. Okay, so in the way that I fight, I tend to try and feel out an opponent. I tend to put feints in, I move around, I might put a real attack in, but without fully committing myself, to see what their default responses are, and this is what I mentioned before. But to come back to my main point for this sort of additional appendix video to the previous one, it is absolutely the case that I prepare and my students prepare to deal with people who are going to do this double hit, because regardless of whether it's good or bad or anything else, it happens. It happened in history, it happens now. We know the reasons for it happening are multiple. In modern HEMA, I think the most common reason for it happening is because people are thinking about hitting rather than about protecting themselves, because there's not usually any real threat of injury. But absolutely you have to train to deal with it. But that doesn't change the fact that doubles are still freaking annoying, okay? And they are something that really annoy me, especially when I'm trying to prevent my students from doubling, when I know that they know what to do, but in that moment of panic with that flinch response, they will sometimes go for the hit rather than the guard, when they should be guarding and then riposting. So it's something to watch out for. And I have to say there are certain styles of fencing, particularly certain styles of Italian rapier, perhaps you could say Lichtenauer longsword, where because of some of the techniques are attacking into an attack, but they have to be done exactly correctly, and if they're not, they lead to a double hit. And so there are certain styles of fencing which I would class as slightly higher risk. If you look at Sabre, for example, it's mostly parry riposte. We do have stop cuts and stop thrusts, but they're not that much a core of the system. They're kind of an added on, a plug on bit to the system. The core of Sabre, for example, is parry riposte. So the priority is always defend yourself, cover your line before you attack the person back. And we see the same thing in Fiore's longsword, and indeed in I would argue in Bolognese systems like Marozzo as well. But there are some systems out there which seem to focus on attacking into an attacking line. Now, some of you go, oh, that's what Bruce Lee used to talk about. I would also, this is something that came up in the comments under the previous video, unarmed fighting, totally different to armed fighting in this regard, because a double hit just means two people punched or two people kicked or kneed or headbutted or whatever. In unarmed, you can sustain many punches or many kicks a lot of the time, but you cannot sustain many stabs or cuts to your body. Weapons mean that single hits can be vastly more effective than in unarmed martial arts. Cheers, folks. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on Facebook. You can buy t-shirts through Spreadshirt, support us on Patreon, or follow us on Pinterest. Thank you.